A number of years ago, I was using an online chat site and got talking to a woman who claimed to live around 50 miles from me. We chatted quite happily for a couple of days, then on the third day, a Saturday night, she was online and we were chatting, but she seemed different somehow. Something just didn't seem right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. She explained that she was drinking, and I assumed that was the reason for her strange behavior. As we continued chatting, she suddenly started talking about dark, disturbing things. She told me about her twisted fantasies, the things she liked to do to her victims, the pleasure she derived from causing pain and suffering. I was horrified, but I couldn't stop reading her messages. As the night went on, her messages became more and more disturbing. She started to mention things that she couldn't possibly have known about me, details from my personal life that I had never shared with anyone online. I started to feel a creeping sense of unease, as if I was talking to someone who knew me far too well. But when I asked her how she knew these things, she just laughed and said that she had her ways. By this point, I was terrified. I tried to end the conversation and log off, but something was holding me back. It was as if the woman had some kind of hypnotic power over me, compelling me to keep talking to her. And then, I heard a strange sound over the chat room. It was a soft, eerie sound, like a whisper in the darkness. I could hear my own name being repeated over and over again, and it was coming from the computer speakers. I tried to unplug the speakers, but the whispering continued. It was as if the woman had somehow possessed my computer and was now speaking to me through it. I could feel a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead as I stared at the screen. The woman's messages had become more and more insistent, more and more threatening. And then, without warning, the chat room window disappeared. The screen went black, and I could hear a low, ominous humming sound coming from the computer. I tried to turn it off, but it wouldn't respond. It was as if the computer had taken on a life of its own and was now working against me. And then, suddenly, the screen came back to life. But it wasn't the chat room anymore. It was a live video feed from inside my own house. I could see myself on the screen, sitting in front of the computer, staring in terror at the image before me. And then, I heard the woman's voice again, coming from the speakers. She was laughing, a cold, heartless laugh that sent shivers down my spine. And as I watched, I could see her face on the screen, her eyes glowing with a sinister light. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped, held captive by a stranger who had somehow managed to invade my life. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the screen went black. The computer shut down, and the room was plunged into darkness. I sat there, shaking and sweating, staring at the blank screen. The woman was gone, but I knew that I would never forget her. The chat room horror had shown me that the internet could be a dangerous, frightening place, full of unknown and unseen dangers. And I knew that I would never be the same again. The memory of that night would haunt me forever, a reminder of the horrors that lurked in the shadows of cyberspace. I had always been fascinated by haunted objects, so when I heard about the old abandoned house on the outskirts of town, I knew I had to investigate. The rumors said that the house was home to a haunted doll, one that had caused the mysterious disappearance of the previous owners. As I stepped inside the dusty old house, I could feel the weight of the years bearing down on me. The air was thick with the scent of mildew, and the floorboards creaked under my feet. But my attention was soon drawn to a small doll on a shelf. It was old and worn, with chipped paint and missing hair. But there was something about the doll that sent chills down my spine. As I reached out to touch the doll, I heard a strange whispering voice. It was a soft, eerie voice, one that seemed to come from the doll itself. I pulled my hand back in shock, but the voice continued. It was as if the doll was trying to speak to me, to tell me its story. And then, I heard a faint rustling sound. I turned around, and to my horror, saw that the other dolls in the room had come to life. They were moving on their own, their joints creaking as they shambled towards me. I tried to run, but the dolls were too fast. They surrounded me, their tiny hands clawing at my clothes, trying to pull me down. And then, the doll from the shelf spoke again. This time, its voice was clearer, and I could understand the words. It told me that it was possessed by the spirit of a young girl who had died in the house many years ago. The girl had been lonely in life, and she had clung to the doll as her only companion. But in death, the girl had become twisted and malevolent. She had used the doll to terrorize anyone who entered the house, seeking revenge for her lonely existence. As the doll spoke, I could feel a coldness spreading through me. It was as if the ghostly presence of the young girl was trying to possess me, to make me her new companion. I struggled against the doll's grip, fighting to break free. But the other dolls had closed in, and I was trapped. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the attack stopped. The dolls retreated to their shelves, their lifeless eyes staring at me from the darkness. I stumbled out of the house, shaking and sweating. The haunted doll had nearly taken me, but I had somehow managed to escape. As I walked back to my car, I knew that I would never forget the experience. The haunted doll had shown me that there was real evil in the world, that there were forces beyond our understanding. And I knew that I would never be the same again. The memory of the haunted doll would haunt me forever, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. I was 12. I woke up to a rough shove, assuming that my sister was waking me up. It was early morning, about 7:30. I groggily stepped out of the bed and was hit with hairspray fumes. I heard the sound of someone taking a shower, as well as loud hurried footsteps and repetitive spritzes of the hairspray can. I walked to the dresser and pulled out a blouse and a skirt. As I got dressed, I heard knocking on my door. I turned around to see my sister standing there, with a puzzled look on her face. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. I turned back to the dresser and pulled out a brush, trying to ignore the knocking. "No one, just getting ready for the day," I replied, running the brush through my hair. The knocking persisted, getting louder and more insistent. I turned to face the door, feeling a sense of dread rising in my chest. "Who is it?" I asked, hoping it was just my parents or another family member. "It's me," a voice called out from the other side of the door. It was a man's voice, and I didn't recognize it. I froze, my heart racing in my chest. I had no idea who this man was or what he wanted. I turned to my sister, who looked just as scared as I felt. "Don't open the door," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. The man continued knocking, his voice growing more urgent. "Come on, open up. I need to talk to you." I could hear the fear in my sister's voice as she spoke. "I don't know who you are. Please leave us alone." The knocking stopped abruptly, and there was a moment of silence. Then, we heard the sound of footsteps retreating down the hall. My sister and I looked at each other in relief, but we knew that this was far from over. For the rest of the day, we were on edge. Every sound made us jump, and we were constantly looking over our shoulders. That evening, my parents returned from their trip, and we told them everything that had happened. The next few weeks were filled with anxiety and fear. We kept all the doors locked and checked every window before going to bed. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched, like the intruder was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike. One night, I was home alone. My parents had gone out for dinner, and my sister was at a friend's house. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book, when I heard a noise outside. It was a soft tapping sound, like someone was lightly rapping their fingers on the window. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had locked all the doors and windows, so how was someone outside? The tapping continued, growing louder and more insistent. I felt paralyzed, unable to move or call for help. Then, the tapping stopped, and there was silence. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. I eventually got up and checked all the doors and windows, and they were still locked. After that night, things started to calm down. We never heard from the intruder again, and life slowly returned to normal. But I could never forget the fear and uncertainty that I felt during those few weeks. It was a reminder that there are always dangers lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike when we least expect it. From that day on, I always made sure to lock all the doors and windows, even when I was home alone during the day.